Hello, and welcome to this episode of Insufferable Experts. We are the three people that you would least like to meet at the party: David the lawyer, Kaylan, the startup founder, and myself, Tyler, the technologist. Today we have a really special episode for you. We're going to be mansplaining the female founder experience. And to help us with this, we have someone on staff who is very intimately familiar with the female founder experience. Kaylan, David and I are going to be asking you questions about what it's like to be a female founder. So, are you ready?
Never been more ready. I'm pumped.
Awesome. So, I want to talk about a stat that is thrown around all the time, and sadly, it doesn't change from year to year. And it's that 2% of female founded companies get funding, which means 98% of the funding goes to companies funded by men. And that in and of itself is shocking. And then to add to it, women control 70% of household purchases. So there's a big disconnect for me around why someone who understands buyer psychology and what people like are not the ones at the helm or streamlining or moving forward and creating these businesses and getting the funding to do so. So Kaylan, a bit of a loaded question there, but I wanted to lay the ground as to why do we see that disparity?
It's a great and very meaty opening question. I'll take it in small parts and chunks. The 2% of funding that goes to female-backed companies or female-founded companies is a stat that is oft-repeated and, as you said, has not changed in many, many years. So initiatives aside, we're not doing better. And, I almost threw in a joke about that's because women are too busy controlling all of the household labor and doing all of that 70% of shopping and consumer spending that they don't have time to start companies. But they do, we are here, and 2% is still an egregious and abysmal number. I don't think it's all gender-based bias, but I'll tell you a couple things that I think weave in. VC in particular is a map to a number of sorting and filtering mechanisms, like where you went to school, what accelerator you may have come through, and what other funds are joining the investment. And in order to filter through the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of companies that are started each year, you kind of have to start somewhere and build a framework. I have a lot of thoughts on how to change and or fix that framework, but we'll save that for another time. I really think that here we're looking at repeatable or repeated errors, right? Where I'd love to say it's purely a resource issue, that they can't quite consider every facet of every unconventional founder, but their job is picking winners. And most unicorn companies did not map to the middle of the pack. Sort of few inflationary rounds and a moderate exit is about the best we often get. But the really big home runs come from off the beaten path, a little bit of a different founder profile. But again, in sorting and filtering, you're looking for pattern matching. Okay, great. Did this person go to my alma mater? Did I get an intro from somebody that I already know? You've heard me say this before, whether it is for finances, investing, negotiating raises, salary discussions. Women are not typically socialized. That's starting to change, but we're not typically socialized to be together in the room where discussions are being had about things like picking stocks, about your bonus. What did you get? What did you get? Like, we're conditioned to stay quiet about money matters. It's improper. Again, like I said, it's shifting. But if I think about having been in a law firm and friends with lots of investment bankers, like, if they were going out to the bar and they ended up at the cigar bar, the strip club, the golf course, the country club, there are a lot of spaces where, even just based on legacy, men dominate, right? It's not like there's an explicit bias that says you cannot learn how to play golf and come join us. But is it the natural realm? Is it the natural way of things yet? Not yet. And I, even at my last law firm, had partners invite me to play golf, which was so nice. And I felt so included. But one, that was once across maybe 100 different deals that had just a casual social event that was golf. I got invited once. But two, on my own part, I don't golf. Like, that's just not something that I sort of learned to do. There were no female golf teams in like high school and college and things. So even if I wanted to, it would have just been a solo endeavor that, was me designing myself to network better. And so I think there are so many different funnels and there are so many different reasons, but network is a huge, huge factor where we're simply not the ones who default to asking our whole group of golf folks who happen to work in financial services if they can cut us a 100K check or if they can get us our first bootstrap or angel round. Yeah, so that's one of them. And then
Okay,
I will also,
I'm going to interject here
sure.
and say I think that that's partially female, but I also think it's partially socioeconomic status.
Yeah.
I think the like country clubs is a very waspy thing. Like
Yeah.
the only people who join country clubs are rich white men.
Yeah.
And it's not like if you grew up in a poor background, doesn't matter your gender, you didn't learn how to golf. So I think
that's you're right, absolutely.
I think that that's an additional factor you need to like put into it along the terms of like the golf thing or some particular hobbies. Like I don't know how to sail. Why would I have learned how to sail? That's but lots of lawyers like sailing for some reason.
But I would throw it out. I would throw it out though when we talk about like inclusivity of things. Like, what if we swapped golf or sailing with like skiing, for example? Mm-hmm. It is also an expensive hobby, but it is something that you can kind of go like, it's like, I've never skied. All right, I'm going to be on the bunny slopes, but we'll still meet in the lodge and have the drink and do the thing, right? Like, and I think that there's definitely an aspect to it. And I also see, and I don't know if this is a pattern that's going to then lead to some of this equilibrium, but like, even, and we've been talking about sports a little bit here, but you look at like Kaylan Clark with the WNBA, and like we're seeing these generations come up, and what used to be a divide of like what was men and what was women, like we're seeing a meshing here, and they're finding their niches and they're finding their groove, and and I think it's wonderful. You're just seeing like more and more girls growing up being like, yeah, I can do anything, and that was like the aspiration 20 years ago when we were growing up. And it's just over time, we're starting to actually see those things materialize with the internet and being able to model off of what we're seeing people do. And so like, I did want to double click on that, Kaylan, and be like, do you see that dynamic changing in terms of those rooms? Because even as I was leaving consulting 4 or 5 years ago, that type of stuff was starting to get phased out as well as we moved along.
Yeah, a couple things. I think that, for one, I've been on ski trips. I do know how to ski. I've been on ski trips and they're so much fun, but that really is where bonding happens. So it's a critical part to socialize in business. I really think that no matter what arena you're in, and so finding activities that are slightly more inclusive is a huge way, and we'll talk about this later, but it is a huge way to support women and diverse founders coming up, is just find something else to try, right? It's like, I know you love golf, but just try something else is a very cool way to explore and experiment. The other thing is, Tyler, your point is an incredible one. I see a very big shift happening. And when I was coming up in a law firm, 15 years ago, it was still a very tense environment, even if we wanted to believe that equality was, and it was just a pure meritocracy. There was a chipping away at tokenism, right? Having one woman in the room was enough. We have a woman. And so a lot of higher ups, whether it's bosses, whether it's partners, whether it doesn't matter what it is, see this scarcity mindset of, if I support another woman beneath me, there's a threat she's coming for me, because we don't have this vision of there's room for everybody. I do see that shifting. I don't think there is always going to be girl on girl crime. And don't take me out and, for calling women girls, but like the idea that girl on girl crime will continue to happen, but ideally at lower levels. And I think that actually starts to go away when male perspectives shift. And the reason I say that is because they are still the ones largely dominating the atmosphere. So it's not to foist blame upon a gender. It's just saying, like, you know, guys, there is an evolution that we both all need to participate in before we can sort of erode some of these barriers. And I will, to go back to the original question, say that there's something interesting that I don't think we've talked about yet. And that is, there's just, as generously as possible, I think that some female founded companies just aren't getting funding due to earnest blind spots. You know, we're asking largely male dominated rooms to resonate with period cups or the 40th clean beauty trend, and they just can't. They just don't, because it's not inherently an industry in which they participate. So when you're asking them for a few $1,000,000 and you're saying, this is sort of the inverse of like, trust me, bro. It's a different kind of trust me, bro, saying, I know this market. Tyler, as you said, we control over 70% of consumer spending. Women do know what other women want, but they're either not in the room at the investment table, or they're not coming through the quote unquote right network. They didn't get a warm intro that's like, no, she really knows what she's talking about, that gives you this sort of proxy trust. And so when you go in cold and you're saying to a room of men, like, I swear this postnatal industry is huge, right? You know that like mom groups would go feral for a bunch of new and exciting products, but convincing somebody who doesn't have the lived experience is also just another hurdle. So I see a lot of underfunded, exceptional female founders who are just hunting for the few funds that have like a special interest, or they declare themselves women run, or they declare themselves seeking diverse or underfunded founders. Those are, you know, those initiatives are awesome, but like A16Z, here's a free layup for you. Create a pre and postnatal vertical. Y'all will crush. It's a gold mine, but I do think a lot of the mimicry in the space requires some sort of first mover, putting together your panel of experts, getting some insights and industry, you know, folks in the room and the people who are buying, and then go explore new territory, and you will unlock, you know, exponential gains. And then at that point, you're finding money with money, and you're just saying, listen, it doesn't matter if it's period cups. I just crushed it on a 50x exit, right? So at that point, it becomes a meritocracy.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
So I think that is a perfect transition for another question that we had, is that in addition to increased funding, what are some specific ways men can encourage women to start companies, and how can they support them once they do? Funding is the obvious answer, but there have to be other additional things, because there are men out there who want to be supportive but aren't millionaires and don't have the money to put into funding or the experience or the interest to properly vet a company.
Yeah, I think this is a very cool question. I'm always a huge proponent of awareness being step one. Just knowing that there is implicit bias, that there is an imbalance. If you're really interested in what I'll call the meritocracy of startup land, then you can and will amplify women's voices when you see them being muted. I will give you a very short anecdote, but Tyler and I were in a boardroom at a massive firm not long ago, pitching to prospective clients who actively refused to address me. I was sitting at the head of the table. My title is CEO, and I was the expert on the topics of which we are speaking. Tyler and I have very different expertises, and yet when you're talking in my sort of dance space, I absolutely don't undercut his expertise. It's just that I should be answering here. And so what Tyler did that was just so reassuring, whether or not the clients responded appropriately or in kind wasn't my question. But what he did as a male ally was lobbed the questions over to me and said, Kaylan can answer that. That's Kaylan's domain, or, you know, this is what Kaylan, she's running the show on this specific thing that you just asked about. And it seems small, but the reason we're even calling this podcast like Mansplaining the Female Founders Experience is it matters the lens and the microphone that the message is coming through. Sometimes the messenger does matter more than the message. And having Tyler as a man who has a beard, a presence, he's tall, he's, whatever, like there's some level of that even if we wish it weren't true, they respect the message coming out of his mouth. And it's very interesting to see how their behavior shifts. So one thing you can absolutely do, you don't have to be 6 feet tall with a beard to do it, but one thing you can do is be the messenger to reiterate a message and refer back to the founder who said it. And I don't care if they're posting on socials, repost them. If they're doing a podcast, subscribe. Like these are free things that you can do. Amplify your friends' businesses, whether they are male or female. But there are so many ways that you can showcase your allyship and or your backing by just sort of like trumpeting their successes and reminding people who's building it. The last thing I will say is also buy your friends' services and products and don't ask them for a discount. That's the one thing that involves a little bit of money, but a really great way, even if you're not a millionaire and you cannot fund their company, something you can do for any founder in your life that you love is try their product, buy their ice cream, their socks, their whatever, try things out and don't ask for a discount, because the earliest days of traction for them to get external money are dependent on the initial traction, paid subscribers, paid customer, whatever it is. So that's, to me, the biggest way you can support people is buy from them and don't ask for a discount.
I've spoken to other women who run their own businesses, and the concept you talk about, Kaylan, where there's like having a man in the room. Like sometimes they've told me, like, I'll go into conversations and I just know that I need to give like someone that's working with me, I need to bring that person into the room with me, which is unfortunate, and it breaks my heart when I hear it. But like at the end of the day, we're still not over that hump yet, right? And I think that actually segues into something that we wanted to talk about, which is, when you go into those situations like pitching or doing fundraise or anything like that, like what are the considerations that you need to have going into it? Because for me, I'm just like, I'm in the, the white dude that's bouncing in and like, yeah, we're going to have a conversation. So for me, like, I don't really do a lot of preparing other than like, what is it that the message that I want to, talk about there? And so, but like curious, and I suspect that there's probably some other calculus that goes on when you are also doing those things as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's just different types of preparation, because like, I don't know if over preparing includes like checking when you sit down, does this skirt rise up too much? Like is this lipstick color look different in daylight versus nighttime? Like there are different types of preparations. And I think, we'll get to it in another portion. I think what Tyler's saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, Ty, I'll mansplain your statement to you, but you have a finite set of concerns that are substantive in nature.
Yes.
There is a lot of subjective bullshit that comes into my preparations. Is this outfit all right? I want to show personality, but not set myself up for judgment. I want to find resonance and be liked. I will do my homework on folks and figure out, where have they worked before? Do we have any mutual connections? Can I tell if they have any hobbies that I want to connect over? Because we buy from people, and I use that term loosely, but we buy from people we like, know, and trust. So buying has a big set of differentiated concepts, but one of those things may be investment. Like I call that a purchase. You are investing in somebody, you're handing them money in exchange for something else. And so do they feel like they can resonate with me? And I happen to lean more masculine in tendencies. I love motorcycles. I cold plunge. I marathon. I like bro out with some of the best of them. And to the point where it's funny between Tyler and me, because people make assumptions about who's doing what. And usually it's the exact inverse. But I leverage those points of just commonality and connection because we don't have golf. We don't have maybe video games. I don't have kids. A lot of folks in the room that I'm approaching have kids. Like there are lots of things that I do not line up with. And so I just have to find where are my angles, because any cold room, as we talked about for funding, and, you know, the question about pitches specifically, you're talking about VCs who see thousands of pitches in the form of just a deck submission, email connects, or live pitches, hundreds, if not thousands a week in the aggregate at large funds. So they're just looking for people that they resonate with and really feel comfortable betting on, because it is a mix of both art and science, right? Any early stage startup is a mix of art and science. You're making a bet on a horse that you've not necessarily seen perform before. So we are mapping to things that we know, like, and trust. And so ways that I go in, you know, I do a number of the annoying bullshit analysis that has to do with, like, should my hair be slicked back? Should it be down? Should this outfit, that's it. Oh, if I wear one of my favorite set of, like, really cool sneaker collaborations, that's a conversation point. So, okay, let me put those on. I know this guy's a sneakerhead, right? But then when you get into the room, it's just trying to leverage that enough to have a friendly conversation. And then I'm not pressed about it, because if on the merits you're not down, that's okay. But you still want, like, searching for rapport is just very different when you're entering a cold room as a guy, Tyler, who can probably, like, bang out a couple, like, yep, I've got 2 under 5. Yes, I play this video game. Yes, I golf, whatever. You've got some silver thread there. And searching for that as a woman can be difficult, can be different in a way where you just have to do a little bit more digging, to figure them out and try to establish, like, hey, am friend.
I was going to say, it sounds like there are invisible boxes that men check before they go in the room that women have to consider, right?
Great way to put it.
Yeah, I wanted to actually, David, I was going to throw it over to you, because I know that you had some questions around, like, wardrobe and everything.
Which is, speaking of research, I did some research before this on Kaylan's Instagram page. And it said in one of her Instagram posts, quotes, "My wardrobe is surprisingly tiny, and you can tell that when I'm home, I wear the same items over and over. It's far easier to stay sane through countless events, conferences, travel this way. How did you arrive at this conclusion? Why does your small wardrobe help keep you sane? And given its small size, how do you decide whether a particular outfit gets a space in your closet?" And obviously, I'm going to add a precursor with Kaylan lives in New York, I live in LA. We both have relatively small closets, but it's more than that. I think the interesting components are, besides just I live in a big city, closet space is limited.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, as you said, I live in New York, so closet space is precious. I like funky but functional basics. I actually love fashion. But this season in my life, I am working from home or co-working spaces. So I'm not usually getting dressed up for the day. And I will also say that keeping basics on rotation alleviates some decision fatigue. I'm not quite Steve Jobs level with it, but as I said, in this season, we are just about maximizing efficiency. So, you know, I think that there is a broader conversation to be had around the expectations of women's outfits, right? Ty and I laugh about this all the time, because Tyler can show up in a t-shirt and jeans to just about anything. There it is, in the startup space. And I'm caveating in the startup space because A, that's where we live, but B, well, also tech. But B, even when I say the word gala, I mean he can rock up in a t-shirt and jeans. Wow. This may not be your charity galas out in the Hamptons, but like a tech gala, you completely could.
I might throw a blazer on top of the t-shirt.
You would, Tyler. You look great when you throw. I know you have.
I would never do that.
It's great.
Yeah. I would never do that. Theoretically possible, but I would never do that. Oh my God, I would be so uncomfortable.
So at the end of the day, conferences, I spend a lot of time on the road, and conferences are a very big one. You are meeting lots of people. Your outfit is the first thing they notice about you. If you are a dude, 99% of the time, nobody gives a shit. And that's fine. That's great. Lucky you. But as I touched on before, people are judging or are trying to information gather. And so is this color too loud? Did I wear something fancy enough? We're going to 3 different daytime events, and then I've got a gala in the evening. So in my laptop bag are heels and a dress. Like, there is so much more to consider. And so what I would do is keep my home wardrobe intentionally very small. And then I used to have the unlimited Rent the Runway subscription where I would just ship a bunch of never before worn outfits to my final destination, pack in a carry-on the basics, toiletries, workout gear, and, sleepwear, and then have some fun things to wear. And I will also say that is more of a strategy on my part that leans into, okay, great, I'm going to be at this huge conference and I want to meet up with folks. I can tell them, look for the woman in the lime green suit. Look for the woman who's in head to toe pink, whatever it is, right? It's a tech conference, but it cuts both ways ultimately, right? You're a little bit damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's a pressure to fit in what, like I was saying before, you buy from people you like, know, and trust. And so if I were kind of on the level wearing like a t-shirt and jeans, maybe that would make somebody feel more comfortable than if I was in a chartreuse suit with my Air Maxes on. But at the same time, they're not sure what to do with it because largely our vision of women looks like a bit more of a performative exhibition, right? And we sort of feel entitled to decide whether or not she looks appropriate. You're going to ask me if I'm sick, if I'm not wearing makeup. Like, this happens. We love to think we're above this, but this does, in fact, happen. Or, if you're wearing something nice and somebody makes like a slick offhand comment about taking you home later. Like, these are just the calculus is somewhat endless. And I will make the recent pop culture reference of the fact that, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez just got married. And for whatever it was worth, I don't care where you fall on the dress. The dress she wore was picked apart to shreds. And although I don't support the excess or the wedding or Bezos in any manner, I thought it was fine. It was lovely. But we've taken out our frustrations with the billionaire status and all of this, whatever frustrations have been wrapped up in it. We took out on Lauren's dress, her fillers, her plastic surgery, and we ripped her apart. And I mean, we as a collective. Whereas a sartorial expert said that Jeff Bezos' suit was the most abysmal thing he'd ever seen, and it was keeping him up at night. But it was roughly crickets over there. And all of that is simply to say we just don't analyze genders the same way. You can think it's right. You can think it's wrong. You can say, I don't do that. I don't care. That's fine. But this is where we live. And I think women are constantly accounting for that. And shit's just exhausting.
And I think that brings up an interesting question because I, as we've talked about, am not all those things, but I do have opinions. And so when I see those things, I wonder, what can I actually comment on without coming off as that sexist ass or that jerk or all that kind of stuff?
Sneakers, David, sneakers. I say that like half kidding. But the reason I wear cool sneakers is because it's a conversation starter that is not awkward in massive environments. Like a crypto conference is 98% men, right?
Yeah.
And I am there to do business, to network, to build relationships. But I will tell you the biggest hack, and I hate that word, but like the biggest hack I have found is leveraging my love of cool sneakers, because it tends to come off awkwardly if a man is like, great shoes, but I'm wearing spike heels.
Yeah.
There is a sexual undertone to the whole exchange. Whereas if they recognize a Murakami collab or it's something, anything like, oh, sick sneakers, I am telling you, there are, again, whether we like it or we don't, there are absolutely things you can comment on. So this isn't like, oh, men, you can't say anything, but things that are not historically sexualized. And unfortunately, a lot of things have been, but glasses, cool rings, like sneakers, just avoid things that are historically sexualized and you are Gucci, or make sure it's just somebody that you're close with. Like if Tyler tells me I look great in this dress, there is negative sexual undertone.
Correct.
And I will take it at face value. But if I don't know you,
yeah,
maybe it lands differently. And I think that's just the nature of trusted relationships and otherwise. So I would look to those things to be your guiding lights. If you know somebody very well, tell them they look great, but do it to men too. Tie, haircut, amazing, crushing it, looking fly. And then you have become for yourself, like you've become an example of sort of an equal opportunity appreciator, if you will. And the people in your circle are going to have a lot more like context for you giving them a compliment or pointing something out. I'm not even saying it's exclusive to compliments, whatever. If you want to point something out, if you want to make an observation, people who spend time around you will know that you just kind of make nice complimentary observations and you're good.
Absolutely.
Tyler, I think you had one more question to wrap up.
Yeah, I wanted to end this on a high note because there is a lot that we can talk about with dynamics between men and women and being a female founder. But Kaylan, in your view, what are some of the advantages of being a female founder that you wouldn't otherwise experience?
Very good question. There are plenty. I think first and foremost, women's default nature of collaboration over competition doesn't get enough airtime. So many studies show that many of our socialized traits make for excellent leadership. But this sort of makes this is a wholly different episode, but those can frequently be seen as lesser or potential liabilities where, for example, empathy, right? Like we don't tend to value empathy enough in a business context. And I think we historically overvalue masculine traits. Like most of us are sitting at desks, guys, not going to war. The ruthless savage is not the mold for success anymore, right? And so that being a woman, whether it is externally valued or not, makes for great leadership, insight, gut feelings. Our instincts are good. And I think that comes fairly naturally to us. I will kick it over to you, Tyler, and say that, our bullshit radar tends to be really good because we've had our head on a swivel for so many parts of our lives that I don't even attribute it to being a lawyer. I just think that even absent a 15-year legal career, I am constantly processing information to figure out somebody's ulterior motive. Are they safe? Are they a good relationship? Are they whatever it is? And regularly, you and I have that discussion where you're kind of like, yeah, you just got to give me some time to catch up. Like, I know you saw this months ago, but that to me is a huge win, whatever we want to call that.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, women really do have this innate ability to understand motivation under the covers. Like they take that empathy and they kind of understand like, all right, what is the angle that this person is coming from? I always make the joke that, and you've heard this before, Kaylan, that you act in a guilty until proven innocent structure, and I act in you're innocent until proven guilty. Because I just tend to be a lot more like, yeah, I'm sure this will all be fine. And maybe that's a function of my life and my experience that I've gotten, right? Who knows? But I do think having that back and forth with you is really valuable when we're doing decision making. And I don't know that I will get that from most men. I could see myself very quickly falling into a very like bro dynamic with that person. And we just kind of say, F it, let's go, right? And you being that check on me has actually been really... Listen, I've gone ahead and done some of this stuff and they failed miserably. So I've learned my lesson, right? But I think that there's definitely something there. And I have a pretty high confidence in interacting with women in my life. That is definitely a gender-based thing. And I think that brings a lot of value that we don't see a lot.
Yeah, there's something too that I appreciate that. I also think we operate very well as a team. And what people don't tend to expect is that if they are in fact seeking empathy, you're the one to go to, and not usually me. Like that's David, speaking of incorrect assumptions, like,
right.
If you want a hug, don't come to me. But if you want like quick acting, we're going to fix this. That's not to say, Tyler, you don't fix things. I'm just saying like, I will spring into action, but it is a very different It depends on what you need at the moment. And that is an interesting dynamic for us because people, again, do tend to misjudge us. And they think if they've got a problem, they should, in fact, avoid Tyler when he's going to be the one who like really holds your hand and makes you feel better about things, gives you a big virtual hug. And that is like, we leverage that dynamic so well because it's like, great, that is your strong suit. Excellent. I am adapting to pick up some of his traits on that front, whereas he is also adapting and picking up some of my traits on the, we can't drag this person along forever. If they're not willing to do the thing, commit to the thing, like we got to keep it moving. And so we balance each other out. And I will say one more thing, which is I think on top of that, a lot of these what sound like gripes that we discuss in the female experience all funnel into the net that women are incredibly resilient creatures. So not only is our physical pain tolerance markedly higher, I can tell you all from watching men do those period cramp simulators that I think are hilarious, but I would say sort of our emotional regulation is necessarily more advanced. People may disagree, but I would encourage you to look at our sort of current political stage. And all of those elements feed into the idea that especially in the startup land where you are running headfirst into a brick wall all day, that resilience, that sort of I refuse to give up because I know what it feels like to have to overcome obstacles in so many different ways. This is not gender exclusive. So, I give a lot of credit to anybody who's overcome obstacles in their past or in their life due to whatever. But that makes for the person you want to bet on at the end of the day. And to tie it all the way back to the very beginning, I think it is a fool's errand to continue mapping to historically underperforming metrics in the venture space or funding women, amplifying women, once you realize that, holy shit, like you take a bet, take a chance. The historical outperformers have always been somebody who was, I will say, historically underrepresented, right? Because whether it's a chip on our shoulder, our resilience is through the roof, doesn't matter. All these things we talk about, it is a very cool thing to know, no matter what comes tomorrow, I'm still getting up and getting after it. And that's our biggest, I think that's our biggest element in the plus column.
Awesome. And with that, we're going to close the episode. So thank you very much, Kaylan, for sitting here and listening to our questions. I hope they weren't too out of left field or not understanding the entire experience. But I wanted to say, please subscribe to the YouTube if you've enjoyed this episode. Look for us on Spotify. We're also on Apple. And one more thing, we're going to be running an experiment where on mine and Kaylan's platform called MAGNETIQ, where we're going to be posting about the episode every single week. We're going to be giving some behind the scenes clips. We're going to be asking you as the audience what type of topics that you're interested in. So I'm going to have that link in the show notes below. Please click and join. We'd love to have you on this journey. And for everyone, we are the Insufferable Experts. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.